Officials from the International Red Cross are on their way to collect the first 3 Israeli hostages to be released by Hamas under the ceasefire deal that came into effect just hours ago. Meanwhile, thousands of Gazans are returning to what's left of their homes. Many families are looking to reunite with loved ones after being separated during more than 15 months of fighting. The United Nations says aid trucks have begun entering Gaza to provide support. The 6-week ceasefire deal will also see around 1,900 Palestinian prisoners freed in exchange for 90 Israeli hostages. The start of the ceasefire was delayed by several hours while officials waited for Hamas to name the first 3 hostages to be released. Emily Damari, Doron Steinbrecher and Romy Gonen are expected to be freed this afternoon. DW's Tania Krämer is outside the Shawa hospital in Tel Aviv, where the hostages are due to be taken after their release. Tania, after 15 months in captivity, what sort of state are the hostages going to be in?
Well, this is also what we talk to experts about. They say it's a very different, probably, scenario than what we've seen in November 2023 during the first release of hostages when they were exchanged for then Palestinian detainees at the time. The captives have been now in captivity for almost 15 months, 471 days to be exact today. So they might be in a very different condition now. From what we understand now, the International Red Cross is now on their way. We don't know exactly the timetable yet. Then they will be taken, the 3 young female hostages, back to Israel. From there, they will then first be taken outside the Gaza Strip to 3 different centers, depending on where they are in the north or the south, where they will be taken out from Gaza. There they will have a first checkup, and then they will be brought most likely here to Shawa hospital. But if they need, immediate medical attention, then they might have to be brought to a hospital closer to Gaza. So we have to wait and see. And I can assure you here, everybody here in Israel is now waiting to see this process moving forward. Now, once, of course, these 3 hostages will be back in Israel, then the other process that is in parallel will start the release of Palestinian detainees.
And we're just looking there at the Israelis gathered at Hostage Square in central Tel Aviv, waiting for the news, waiting to hear about those hostages having been handed over by Hamas to the Red Cross. Tania, where you are at the hospital, I believe there are also crowds gathered. We'll get back to you soon to find out more. First of all, let's bring in our correspondent, Konstantin Eggert, who's following developments from Jerusalem. First of all, take us through the delays to the ceasefire deal. Earlier, we knew this wasn't going to be an easy deal, but there was a lot of concern earlier in the day when it looked like it wasn't going to happen.
Yes, I must say, Ben, it was quite a jolt because the expectation was that the ceasefire will start at 8:30 local time, that's 7:30 Berlin in the morning. And then there was this announcement from the Israeli government that essentially the ceasefire is postponed until the Palestinian side, Hamas, give the complete list of hostages that are going to be released today. And basically, it was another 2 hours and 45 minutes, under 3 hours, that we had to wait for the ceasefire here. Hamas said, yes, indeed, we are supposed to produce a list of hostages, but it's all right, it's just some kind of technical issue, technical field issue, as they said. And well, then, after 11 hours local time, the ceasefire finally took hold. So that was the way it looked in the morning.
A huge relief as we see Gazans going back to their homes, aid finally getting into the Strip again. And we've heard of the political problems on both sides, especially in Israel, with ministers saying that they're going to resign. Could that topple Benjamin Netanyahu's government. They'd been saying they would resign over this ceasefire deal.
Not even saying that they're going to resign, they already resigned. The far-right Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who promised that he will resign if the deal sails through, resigned, and two ministers from his own party, which is called Jewish Power, also announced their resignations. That does not mean that the government of Benjamin Netanyahu will collapse, but it will have a thinner majority in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. What is more problematic for Netanyahu is the position of another minister, also a far-right member of the government, the finance minister Bezalel Smotrich. He gave an interview this morning to the Israeli army radio and said that what he thinks the government should do is actually occupy Gaza and appoint a military administration there. Only then, he said, Israel will be safe. And he criticized the army also for basically not being strategic enough. And this is a different matter. If Smotrich leaves the coalition, his party leaves the coalition, it's called religious Zionism, then there is a full-blown government crisis, and then the political kind of floodgates here may open very soon. But it did not happen so far.
Konstantin, Eggert in Jerusalem for us. Thank you very much for the analysis. Let's take you now into Gaza, where Ahmed Shawa, who is head of the Palestinian NGO network, joins us from Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. Amjad, we see Gazans cheering. How much do people trust this ceasefire that is now in operation?
Let's first wish this ceasefire will be applied till the end. But what we witnessed this morning, the delay for 2 hours, there is 19 people were killed, tens others were injured while they are trying to reach the areas where they used to stay along the years and where they were displaced for 15 months. So these hours of delay made so many people were made of their lives. And let's switch also that people will feel that really that will be reflected on the humanitarian conditions, to have better humanitarian conditions, the entry of the basic needs to the Gaza Strip, and that the IDPs, displaced people from the Gaza North, can be safely be back to their homes. And according to the different resources, that most of Gaza homes, infrastructure destroyed. About the UN itself, there is 70 to 80% of the Gaza buildings, infrastructure were destroyed. There is 45 million tons of debris all over Gaza Strip. Today, the people managed to go to Rafah, to the south, where when the Israelis were redeployed, and they couldn't find their homes, and they couldn't find the directions towards the areas that they used to stay in. There was intensive destructions all over Gaza Strip. Now we are very busy on the issue of rehabilitation of the health infrastructure in Gaza Strip, and we're looking forward that these health facilities will work again with the maximum capacity, since we have about 110,000 people who are injured. We have tens of thousands of people who are patients who need for medical evacuation and medical treatment, and in the same time to find out sites for displaced people who lost their homes to stay in, and to find water facilities and other facilities for the people who are stay in for long time if there will be no construction process.
So there's a huge need, obviously, as you're signposting. Tell us, though, how much aid is actually getting in at this hour?
Yesterday, there was only from 5 to 10% of the aid which respond to the Gazans' needs in minimum level. Today, there is about 250 to 350 trucks loads is getting Gaza Strip through the different crossings. We hope this will increase as a humanitarian aid, but we need more and more in order to rehabilitate the infrastructure, to at least to repair the damaged homes and facilities as hospitals. So we are looking forward to have this, and in the same time to support the UNRWA initiatives regarding the education. There is hundreds of thousands of children who are supposed to be back to their schools as soon as possible. So this is one of the signals of the sustaining the ceasefire through this. Humanitarian aid is needed, but also we need early recovery for the different private sector and the agriculture sector, the fishing sector, that to continue the life in Gaza Strip. This is the real things that we need for, in addition to the humanitarian aid. Nowadays, I can confirm that 100% of the population of Gaza Strip became pure dependent on the humanitarian aid on all sectors. So this is a bad signal after the destruction of the socio-economic infrastructure in Gaza Strip along the 15 months. We lost also. I cannot say that we, as Gazans, we celebrated the ceasefire. Yes, there was happiness, but was mixed with sadness and concerns.
Amjad, thank you very much for bringing us up to date, and all of that information. Very interesting insights and a very tricky future ahead. Amjad, Shawa, head of the Palestinian NGO network in Gaza for us. And let's bring in Hazem Balousha, a journalist from Gaza who reported for us from there at the start of the war until he was able to evacuate. What are you hearing from Gaza today?
Gaza today is full of hope, full of cheer and fear in the same time. The Israeli troops pulled out from populated areas in the cities along the border. They stayed there for up to some areas 700 meters and some other areas more than 1 kilometer along the eastern and southern border, as well as the northern one. People are returning partially to their homes. The return is, according to the agreement, divided 2 times. Those who are from Rafah or North Gaza, Jabalia and Beit Lahia and Beit Hanun, they go back. But still, those who are stuck in the south and they want to go back to the north, still they will be able to do so in the day 7.
Okay, well, while we've got this huge movement of Gazans underway in exchange for the hostages, Israel is said to release 90 Palestinian prisoners. Give us an idea of who they are.
Well, the first phase, we are talking about Israeli hostages. We are talking about female Israelis and female soldiers and some elderly and plus some young men. Everyone is, has its own ratio. For those who are going to be released today, like according to the ratio, they will be 1 to 30. So 3 Israeli hostages will be released, female hostages, and so everyone will be in exchange of that one will be 30 Palestinian prisoners. Most of them, they will be within the same category, from old and men or women, and those will be from the West Bank for this level.
Any more details about why the ceasefire was delayed this morning?
Well, that is expected. It's not the first time. Every time there was like a conflict in Gaza, there is a delay. Of course, there are some logistics. Hamas lost power for a long time in Gaza. They were not able to communicate with their base in the Gaza Strip, the political leadership outside, with their own people in Gaza. Those who are keeping or the hostages, they are not easy to communicate with, especially after this long time of fighting in Gaza. So Hamas was expecting to this, and that's why before the ceasefire came into effect, they said that we needed 48 hours. So it was a logistical thing. But I mean, and the same happened in the last time in November in that post. There were some delays in delivering and handing over the hostages and releasing the Palestinian prisoners.
Yeah, November of last year was a very tricky point in time, but we're much further on than that now. This war's been going on in all for 15 months at this point in time. How far is Israel, giving us the bigger picture, in its goal of destroying Hamas?
Well, this is not an easy question. I mean, it's too early to say that Hamas is completely destroyed. Hamas ruled Gaza for over 16 years and deepened their roots in the community and the society. They were improving their capabilities. We are talking two things of, or two parts of Hamas. Hamas military capabilities, the military wing of Hamas and other small factions, plus that Hamas ruling Gaza as a government that stayed in Gaza. Those are, we can't say that it is completed and Hamas is gone. No, Hamas is part of the society. And today, the pictures that and the videos came out from Gaza showed us like some militants came out with their guns and in their cars and trucks, and they are patrolling in Gaza Strip streets. Of course, Hamas still kept the Israeli hostages for that time, which means like there are some Hamas still there. Hamas was able to negotiate with the Israeli side, and they reached a deal. It wouldn't be ideal for both sides, for Palestinian or Israeli side, but I mean, this is like what was possible, as both sides said. But I mean, in the coming days, it will be different. I'm sure the second phase will be harder, and how Hamas will deal with that afterwards, and will Hamas be able to survive in Gaza and to continue the governing of Gaza and funding the reconstruction, which would be the big issue in Gaza, as like a huge part of the Gaza Strip was destroyed and devastated.
Some very good points there from journalist Hazem Balousha. Thank you very much for following this with us.
Thank you.
Shortly after the truce took hold, I spoke to Rosalia Bollen, who is stationed in Gaza for UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund. I asked her how this day has been different from others.
Today has been a little bit of an odd day because children and families here, they're really filled with hope and expectation. And so at 8:30 a.m. at first, people came out out of their tents onto the streets. There was children waving at me, children celebrating. But then at the same time, we could hear very, very loudly continued fighting. We heard shelling, we heard shooting of heavy weapons very, very close by. So it was obvious that the deal the ceasefire hadn't started yet, and this was quite nerve-wracking for these families, and equally for the hostages and the families of the hostages, as I can imagine. And at 11:15, when the ceasefire was confirmed, taking effect, people actually have started packing. Some families have started packing. I've been out in Al-Mawasi. There were several children who walked up to me and who asked me, has the war now ended? There seemed to be a bit of confusion. Has it now really ended or not? I spoke with several families who, as I said, were packing up their belongings. Those families were from Rafah, and they were really longing to go back to their homes, to see what's left of it. Children themselves spoke to me about their bedrooms. They hope their bedrooms are still intact. They say that they're dreaming of sleeping in their own bed again after months, if not more than a year, sleeping in makeshift tents on the ground, sometimes without a mattress. Children spoke about the toys that they have had to leave behind when they fled a year ago. So they're very, very keen to know what's left of their homes. And they say things like, I'll help Papa and Mama to remove the rubble. I'll do it with my own hands. I want to find all the toys that I lost. I had this and this teddy bear, or I had this car or this doll, and I hope they're still there. And I won't rest until I find found them. So there's lots of hope here right now, lots of sort of cautious optimism. The fighting did continue until 11:15 a.m. this morning, and several people have been reported killed since the deal was announced a couple of days ago. At least 30 children have been reported killed in the fighting that followed the announcement of the deal. So it's been a great relief for families here. They finally get a moment of long-awaited reprieve. It's been 15 very, very long months of relentless violence, utter deprivation, and deep suffering. But yeah, there's also anxiety as to whether this deal, this ceasefire, will last.
Whether or not it's going to be permanent or temporary, that's the big question at this hour, and depends on what happens on both sides. What about the aid that's meant to be getting in? You said people are returning to their homes, or what's left of them. What about the support for them?
Yes, well, that's a very, very important point you raised there. The suffering of children here in Gaza was in the first place linked to the relentless attacks. Lots of children killed, maimed. Most children have been displaced. But the other aspect to suffering here in Gaza is the fact that people have been living in just horrific conditions for 15 months in makeshift shelters with not enough food. Tens of thousands of children are suffering from acute malnutrition. Diseases are rampant. I went to a shelter just the other day where there had been an outbreak of chickenpox. There's hardly any access to clean water. So that will be the priority in the coming days and weeks. The ceasefire on its own is a critical first step to save children's lives, but on its own, it's not going to address the full spectrum of suffering of children here. We need aid to come in at scale. Far too little aid has come in over these past 15 months. What has come in has been woefully inadequate to address even the most basic needs of families here. So we need a scale up of aid, but in parallel, we also need a scale up of commercial supplies, because humanitarian aid on its own cannot sustain the Gaza population of more than 2 million people. We need commercial supplies, so food items, fresh produce, fish, meat, dairy products, vegetables, fruit, hygiene products, soap, washing powder, nappies for babies, sanitary pads. That all has to come in so that we humanitarians can focus on humanitarian items, and so families can access these basic commodities directly.
A huge task at hand for your work there, Rosalia. We really thank you for taking the time out to speak to us about the situation in Gaza.
Thanks for having me.